Good morning, and welcome to First Parish in Concord on this Sunday after Thanksgiving. My name is Beth Norton. I'm the Director of Music Ministry here, and Gail Carey is our Assistant Director of Music Ministry, and we are delighted to be ordaining MarkRichards to the Unitarian Universalist Ministry this morning. We are also delighted to have the Lincoln Ringers as our special guest musicians under the direction of Martha Goodman. So as we welcome our clergy into the sanctuary, let us rise, please, and sing together hymn number 358, Rank by Rank, Again We Stand.
Please remain standing. Welcome to First Parish in Concord on this beautiful winter morning. We have gathered as a congregation to ordain one who has come from this congregation and gone through the long path of ministry with many trials and many joys, and has come to this day to be ordained by this congregation that he loves so much. I am so glad that you have joined us this morning for the ordination of MarkRichards to the UU ministry. This will be an amazing service that you will all participate in. Welcome to the service today. After the service, there will be a reception downstairs in the parish hall with punch and cake and coffee. Please come down and celebrate with Mark there as well. And if you're interested in the worship sharing circle, it'll be meeting in my office down the hallway. But now let us start our service with the call to worship. These old words from the prophet Isaiah from the Hebrew tradition. He says, "The Spirit of God has sent me to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and release to the prisoners, to comfort all who mourn, to give them garlands instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, the mantle of praise instead of a faint spirit, They shall build up ancient ruins. They shall raise up the former devastations, the devastations of many generations. And you shall be named ministers of our God. Let us worship together. Each time when we gather, we light a chalice that symbolizes our faith, and we know in doing so that we connect ourselves with Unitarian Universalists not only in our own country, but around the world. And in fact, we connect ourselves with all people of faith who wish to see a world more just and more fair. Please join with the words that are printed in your order of service. O flame of our faith, open our hearts and fill our bodies and souls with persistent strength. Enliven our spirits and engage us deeply in this life of ours, this sacred, essential moment now. Please be seated. And at this time, I would like to invite all the children to come forward for the children's message. Now's your time. Come on up. Come on up. Is everybody still really full from all the turkey you ate? Yeah, or the stuffing. Maybe you had a vegetarian Thanksgiving, and you can make pretty good vegetarian stuffing too. Getting all up here. I'm glad you came to church the Sunday of Thanksgiving weekend. Pretty cool, huh? Got a couple more to bring up here. Good to see you guys. Come on up. So, I don't know if you know it, but you came to church on a very special day, right? It seems just like a kind of cold, wet, gray day outside, but inside it is a very special today, because today we are doing an ordination. Now that's a pretty big word, ordination, and it's a pretty big event in the life of a minister. So you see, there's some other ministers here. Will all the ministers here stand up so we can see your robes? Look at that. Usually there's only one or two of us up here. Look at all those ministers in their robes. And look, there's Hannah Gallo. She's preparing to be a minister, and she was a child in this church. The ministers can be seated now. So an ordination is a very special moment in a minister's life. It is the day that that person goes from being just really a regular church person to being a church leader in an official kind of way. Now there's lots of church leaders, so we don't want to get confused about that. Beth is a church leader, and Gail is a church leader, and Dawn is a church leader, and all the Sunday school teachers are church leaders, and Eric is a church leader. So there are lots and lots of leaders in a church. But occasionally we say that some leaders get the title of minister. And what happens is that in a service like this one that we're going to be a part of, it's not like magic, but it really is a point at which they can't go back, right? So on one side of today, Mark is just an ordinary church person that's done a lot of work to get ready for ministry, has done a lot of ministry already, but after today, he'll be just a little bit different. Now, I remember my ordination, and it happened just about 20 years ago. It'll be 20 years in September. And I was ordained at the Birmingham Unitarian Church, which is north of Detroit in Michigan. And they were really nice. They made this wonderful plaque that hangs in my office, and it also helps me remember exactly what day I was ordained. Can anybody read the day there? What's the day say?
September 25th, 1990.
That's the day before your birthday, September 25th, 1999. I was ordained last century. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Almost 20 years. And in those 20 years, I have never once forgotten my ordination. It was a wonderful event. A friend of mine preached the sermon. This congregation that I loved very, very much stood up and said the words that ordained me, and I really felt different after that day. I really felt like it launched me into ministry. And part of that ministry has been what's brought me to be with you and to be your minister for a while. So today is a very important day, and we're going to do that for Mark. And after today, he will feel just a little bit different, and we'll all see him just a little bit differently too. We have some activities for you today. You can go and do yoga in the Emerson room if you'd like. And if any of you want to stay and be with your parents and see the ordination, you can do that. But Don will take you out. Let us sing together as we send you forth. Lovely to see you today.
Let us open our
Thank you so much to the Lincoln Ringers for that beautiful anthem. I'd like to invite Lynn Olson and Cynthia Steele to come forward.
Good morning. A little bit lower for me. I'm Lynn Olson, and along with my friends down there in the fourth row, we're very pleased to bring greetings from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Door County, Wisconsin. We're so pleased that Mark is now a member and affiliated with us as a community minister. We've really enjoyed getting to know Mark over the last few years. His sermons have been enlightening, and we appreciate his insights in his work on the Racial Justice Action Team. Contained in what Paul is going to hold up now, this is an authentic Wisconsin birchwood basket. And inside, inside are greetings from others in our fellowship. They wanted Mark to know that they are thinking of him today. The first is founding member Helene DiUlio, and she said, "You've worked long and hard for this moment, Mark. Congratulations. You are also commended for the compassionate work you do with Unity Hospice. I speak from personal experience because as Unity's chaplain, you were there for my husband, Ray." And then this one's from Reverend Ann Schranz. "I met Mark 1 year ago when we retired from the formal UU ministry and moved to Wisconsin. My first impression of Mark was of a warm, enthusiastic, hospitable guy. Over the past year, we have had many opportunities to talk about ministry in depth and with candor. My esteem for him has only grown, and I am delighted at his ordination today. In my mind and heart, we have been colleagues ever since we met. It is a joy to now refer to this colleague as Reverend Mark." Sarah McKillop quoted Shel Silverstein. "Somebody has to go polish the stars. They're looking a little bit dull. Somebody has to go polish the stars. For the eagles and starlings and gulls have all been complaining they're tarnished and worn. They say they want new ones we cannot afford. So please, get your rags and your polishing jars. Somebody has to go polish the stars." And then Sarah added, "Mark, thank you for your everlasting efforts of polishing the stars, helping them regain their luster that glows from within. Your heart is a treasure box brimming with the gems of compassion, skill, and endless pieces of sheet music, sounding comfort and joy. We at UUFDC are thrilled for Mark and Christina and look forward to having them as a part of our fellowship for many years to come."
I bring greetings from other ministers in Northern Door County. Dear friends, on behalf of the churches in Northern Door County, I bring you greetings as you celebrate the ordination of our colleague, MarkRichards. We are delighted to be a small part of this sacred day. Mark has become an integral part of our community. He has provided a calming presence and compassion for people who are facing their final days. He has supported our ecumenical work in all its variety. We are privileged to call him our partner in ministry. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, much like our own, and she speaks of Moravian at this point, much like our own, we are reminded that ministers are spiritual leaders who help us explore life's deepest questions and challenge us to be our best selves. Mark embodies the high calling of ordained ministry and has helped us in Northern Door County to indeed be our best selves. We join you in the joy and blessing this day brings and in the hope for many more days of grace-filled ministry. In the joy of service, Pastor Dawn E. Volpe from the Ephraim Moravian Church. Thank you.
Thank you both. Every week we are given an opportunity to be generous. When the plate comes our way, we know that the money that we put in it is collected and used to do more things than we could do individually. This is the last Sunday in which we are going to be sharing the plate with Camino Verde. Camino Verde does incredible work in the Amazon basin, helping indigenous folks with a variety of things there. This is Robin Van Loon's organization, and we have been sharing the plate with them all month in November. So if you haven't had a chance to give yet, pull out a $20 bill or two. You can also text the number that is in your order of service. Nice big round number, 40 or 50 will do just nicely. Please give generously as the offering for the good work and witness of First Parish in Concord and Camino Verde is received.
This is our time of prayer and meditation, a time we set aside each week to rest in ourselves and to remember those who are going through a time of loss, struggle, or sorrow in their lives. And later there will be a time for you to speak out the names of those who you know are experiencing a time of joy or struggle in their lives. And we're so happy to have MarkRichards back with us today on this joyous occasion of his ordination. And now you are invited to speak the names of those who you know who are going through a time of joy, struggle, or sorrow in their lives. Join with me in prayer and reflection. Spirit of life, we gather in the midst of the chaos and the beauty of the world, and in the joy and the sorrow of our own lives. At the death of one we love, we mourn the loss, and we are grateful for the life we shared. At the pain and recovery from illness or injury, we can be discouraged, and we are uplifted by the support around us. But sometimes despair sets in, and we need beloved community to remind us that we are not alone. And community holds hope for us until we are able to hold hope again. On Sunday mornings, we light our chalice, lift our voices in song, hold each other in care, and share blessed silence. We give ourselves the space to become whole again, with the faith that we are kindred with a gathering of souls who believe that love is powerful and that hope abounds, so that we might emerge from this place with joy in our hearts. This faithful belonging enables some of us to go out into the world to work for justice, and others to simply get up every morning and live their life. Spirit of life, we come here to fill up on life, to fill up on love, and to fill up on hope. May we each find what we need today. We share a time of silence.
I got out of bed on 2 strong legs. It might have been otherwise. I ate cereal, sweet milk, ripe, flawless peach. It might have been otherwise. I took the dog uphill to the birchwood. All morning, I did the work I love. At noon, I lay down with my mate. It might have been otherwise. We ate dinner together at a table with silver candlesticks. It might have been otherwise. I slept in a bed in a room with paintings on the walls and planned another day, just like this day. But one day, I know, it will be otherwise. One day, I know, it will be otherwise. Our poet, Jane Kenyon, was poet laureate in New Hampshire at the time of her untimely death at 47 years old. She was the beloved wife of the poet Donald Hall, who just died in June of this year at 90. In her volume called Otherwise, a posthumous collection containing 20 poems written just prior to her death, as well as several taken from some earlier books, Kenyon chronicles the uncertainty of living as culpable, temporary creatures, according to Nation contributor Emily Gordon. For Hall, his time of otherwise, without Jane Kenyon, his muse and his companion, was decades long after her death. One day, I know it will be otherwise. One day, we all know it will be otherwise. But today, we are gathered here in this moment to celebrate. We are here to celebrate ministry in this hour of celebration of a particular life discerned, just as all of us here must discern our call in life, our vocation, if you will. This is a celebration of a ministry that spent decades in formation and in creation, being forged in the fire of joy and disappointments, challenge and exaltations. There are lessons for all of us, I believe, in the perseverance of discerning our own calls, whether of ministry, of vocation, our lives in a congregation like this one, or just lives well lived. There are lessons of how to persist in the finding of those places where we can shine our light, where we can shine our love, where we can bring hope, and where hope can be found. In this week, when we have noted the myth of Thanksgiving that challenges us to look at our history as a nation and as a movement, as well as the opportunity at the same time to share what we are each grateful for. I am grateful, for one, that Mark stayed the path. However widely it swerved and meandered through his life and ours, I am grateful that he heard the whisper of a call that was affirmed and informed by this faith community here in Concord, where he was a valued member and where I met him way back when. And that he stayed with that call in his days at the Andover Newton Theological School, where I was for 10 years advisor to the UU students there. He stayed with the fellowshipping process, which proved to slow things down a bit. But ultimately, through all the many joys and the setbacks, those times of otherwise, if you will, still hearing that whisper of a call, answering the call as Andover Newton used to call it in a marketing campaign at the time, "Does God keep you up at night?" That call still drawing him on and ever on through discernment of what was this call all about anyway? How would it manifest? And what did he need to do to water the roots of that manifestation? Parker Palmer once wrote this in his inspiring volume, Let Your Life Speak. Vocation does not come from willfulness. It comes from listening. I must listen to my life and try to understand what it is truly about, quite apart from what I would like it to be about, or my life will never represent anything real in the world, no matter how earnest my intentions. End quote. Palmer is a Quaker. In our Friends in the Friends, as I heard one of my colleagues once call them, there is a process called a clearness committee, which is used to help a person truly listen to their life, to discern what they really are about and what they are called to do. To stop for just a moment in time in the clutter and the responsibilities of life, the fears that can hold one back, to find a clearness, a stillness, like we just sang about. Mark used that process back in 2010 when he was finding, let's say, a few stones in his path, an otherwise passage. In his vocational discernment committee, he called it, I had the privilege of sitting with him, and in many other moments as well, actually. As I know a number of you this morning have sat with him in a number of moments. But for that meeting, Mark wrote this. I'm reminding you now, Mark. When I was a boy of 12 or 13, I remember feeling that my life would be worthwhile and important. I wasn't sure what that direction would take. I didn't know what work I would do or who I was to become. I knew only that my life would be important. As I come to my final decades, I know that my work is incomplete, he wrote. That I have not yet fulfilled that vision of my youth. And I fear that I have not yet found the path that will lead me there. It is from within the fear that I have asked for your help. He asked for our help. Our help was listening to him. Mark walked through that fear to get to this day. Can you believe it? This day of great gladness. He walked through the formation that all ministers do, receiving their Masters of Divinity, as well as completing units of chaplaincy and ministry, in his case in prisons, and his dedication to the Unitarian Universalist urban ministry with the two mentees he walked with there. And I remember particularly how he brought those two young men from Roxbury to join a bus tour of major civil rights movement sites in Georgia, in Alabama. And ultimately, he produced a short film in his spare time, following the footsteps of freedom. It records the experience of those two young men from Roxbury, as they began their travels in Atlanta, and the tour visited important sites like the Tuskegee Airfield and the bridge in Selma, museums and so forth. Along the way, the young men learned about the importance of the civil rights movement to their lives and the need to continue that struggle today with new young people, with new ideas. Mark's film records an awakening, but not just for those two young men, but to all of the participants in that moving journey. While I was serving our congregation in Wakefield, Mark came to speak twice from the pulpit, and he also brought the film to our what we called UU Cinema series. This awakening experience added to other awakenings, large and small, and taught all of us who knew Mark along the way, even as it brought learning to himself and as he reached out for colleagues to walk the path with him. Through it all, he continued to do whatever it took to bring him into closer relationships and focusing on what his life was counseling him to do. He remembered during the discernment committee, and I quote him, "One experience that brought me closer relationships was the summer I spent as a chaplain intern in a hospital in Maine. I was admitted into people's lives when they were in deep crisis. I prayed with children as their parents were dying, and with parents whose child lay in a coma. The relationships were intense and fleeting. My role was to offer spiritual support for the brief time they were in the hospital, and then to let them go with whatever outcome ensued. That summer, I felt needed, I felt useful, and I felt a closer connection to God. Mark sat with folks in the times of otherwise. He continued his process in seminary and beyond, knowing that he was called to a personal ministry. And he used the time that he had in formation to question it, to examine it, to doubt it. I remember that. And as he said in his mid-program review, which I also sat on, I told you, Mark, I found all these files. He reflected on some of his earliest call to ministry when he heard that call to, and I quote him, "Give my life to those who have nothing to lose." He wondered who he was being called to serve. He kept his heart and mind opening to listening for that whispering call, saying at one point, "I envision my ministry as one that addresses injustice and conflict in individuals. If we cannot resolve injustice and conflict," he wrote, "on a personal level, we cannot expect to successfully address them on the global level." But he kept getting drawn back to that personal ministry, pulling him back to that personal relationship. While I was serving as adjunct faculty at Andover Newton, I taught a class in community ministry. Mark was one of the students, and at the time was discerning that maybe that was it. Community ministry might be his path. In that class, we looked at different definitions of what community ministry is, and also what now is called entrepreneurial ministries. Historian of community ministry, Kathleen Parker, states, "Community ministers bring the practical meanings of faith into a more expansive and amorphous arena of care. Their ministries attend to human needs in settings that are often demand a specialized expertise or connect with people in the most extreme exigencies of life." I would add that community ministers bring the practical meanings of faith into the place and time of otherwise. In my early days of training to be an ordained community minister myself, I worked with the late Jody Shipley. Jody taught a community ministry course before me, and I drew on a lot of her ideas. And she was informed by Carl Seberg, who once wrote this: "One of the principal challenges associated with the use of the phrase community ministry is that there is no one definition that seems to adequately capture all of the myriad nuances. Community ministry is not limited to professionally trained and credentialed persons. We can all do community ministry as lay people and ordained. If we are to understand the work of the church as the shared ministry of all members of a given congregation or fellowship, then already there is much community ministry performed by lay persons. Community ministry, then, is more than a profession or a set of credentials. It is more than a function of one particular congregation, seeking to embody the principles and purposes of Unitarian Universalism beyond the walls in the larger community. It does not surprise me at all that Mark is in the larger community answering his call, that he is serving as a chaplain at the Unity Hospice and Palliative Care in Wisconsin, that he is sitting day by day and week by week with those in the times of otherwise. He has been a Unitarian Universalist lay community minister for many, many years. For many years now, even in chaplaincies, in prisons, and in areas where social justice is needed. And today, he will be an ordained community minister. Can you believe it? And we are so glad. I end my words today with a few words by another community minister who was my mentor, Stephen Schick. Across the vast expanse of apathy, deep in the dark space of mindlessness, hidden in the constellations of greed, lost in black holes of anger, the silence of the universe whispers to me. Be passionate awareness. Be selfless compassion. Be peaceful justice. It is with this vast expanse in which Mark will continue to wend his way, to meet those in times of otherwise, to continue to listen to the still, small voice of the universe whispering to him, to continue to listen to his life. As I ask all of us, my friends, to listen to our lives and answer the call to find hope, to find justice, to bring light and bring love. May it be so. Amen.
Thank you so much to the Lincoln Ringers. Is this working? There we go. Because it is the congregation of First Parish in Concord who is ordaining Mark today, I would like to invite the chair of the standing committee, Dave Elwood, to come forward, please. Mark, you can come on forward too.
Good morning. You might have your insert ready for your part. Within the Unitarian Universalist religious movement, the authority to confer ordination lies wholly with the local church. It is a meaningful and joyous occasion when a congregation joins together, as we do today, to recognize one who has chosen ministry in his life's work. We come together this morning to ordain Mark Stephen Richards into Unitarian Universalist ministry. Mark, recognizing your sense of obligation to serve the cause of liberal religion, and having received the recommendation of the Ministerial Fellowship Committee of the Unitarian Universalist Association, and by authority of the Standing Committee of the First Parish in Concord, we offer you ordination to the Unitarian Universalist ministry. Among us, and wherever you are called to serve, we would have you preach the word of truth in freedom and in love, ministering to our joys and sorrows, holding up no less by your example than by your principles of our free faith. Are you ready to enter upon this ministry?
I am.
Will members of First Parish in Concord please rise and recite the words printed in your order of service? We, the members of First Parish in Concord, do hereby ordain you, Mark Stephen Richards, to the Unitarian Universalist ministry. We do pledge ourselves to walk with you in unity of spirit, in the bond of peace, and in the ways of truth and love. Now if you'll be seated, and will family, friends, and colleagues of Mark please rise and recite the words printed in your order of service. Mark, you have touched our lives in many ways. You have supported us through our times of trial, as we have supported you through yours. You have laughed with us in our times of joy, as we have laughed with you in yours. You have offered us steady loyalty, wise counsel, and delightful companionship. We are proud of you as we too enter into the spirit of your ordination with this church community.
With a deep sense of obligation and opportunity, mindful of its privileges and responsibilities, I take up the ministry to which you ordain me. It is with understanding and faith that I pledge myself to continue our mutual search, to nurture and kindle curiosity, enthusiasm, and questioning, to encourage growth and sensitivity, to foster a sense of wonder and mystery about the universe, and to act courageously in our quest for truth, peace, and justice.
And next we will have a presentation of a stole by Kim Stone. Kim, come on up, please.
Something about Mark. Mark has two siblings, our older brother Gary, and I am his much younger, much younger.
And much prettier.
And much prettier. Sister. So we have a family tree whose branches don't extend too far into the future, but one of the wonderful gifts that Mark has given Gary and I is through his intense genealogical work, is a root system that is deep and broad, and has been such a gift to us because it has given us a story and it lets us know who we are. Included in that great number of people, in that cloud of witnesses that I hope are here today, are many, many, many deep thinkers and earnest spiritual seekers. And so Mark's persistence through this marathon has really been less about, I think, persistence and more about realizing something in his DNA that was just meant to be from the very, very beginning. So, so there's that. And then the other thing I was thinking about, at first I was going to say it, and then I decided I wasn't going to say it, and now I'm going to say it again. Because, you know, this was a journey with a lot of stones in it, and one of the 2 times that I have ever witnessed Mark cry was when he ran into one of those stones on this particular path. And what I wanted to say to you, who he is entering into fellowship with, is please don't make him cry again. But I noticed during this service of ordination that he, in fact, did cry again. So thank you for making him cry again. I did envision this sort of like I'm almost done. So, sort of like a marathon. And, you know, this is sort of like you entering the stadium. And here is your gold medal. It's symbolic of a path. One of those that indeed sits in this cloud of witnesses is one beloved being who inspired Mark throughout his life, and that's Thoreau. And so Gary and I have had placed in here a quote by Thoreau that says, "Pursue some path, however narrow and crooked, in which you can walk in love and reverence."
Thank you, Kim. And now all of us get to participate as that cloud of witnesses. Don't go anywhere, Mark. One of the most moving parts of an ordination is a laying on of hands. It is a moment in which we embody what we have done in word and deed. And so I will invite Mark to kneel here. I'd invite his family to come forward and to surround him. Put a hand on his shoulder. Come clear around him. Surround him with your love. I'd like to invite next his colleagues who are present to come forward and to surround the family and to join yourselves as well. And as the clergy are coming forward, please, everyone stand up. Those of you in the balcony, just gently make your way down. We're all going to come as close as we can. Come out of the pews, come into the aisles. You're going to want to be connected one to another to this person. Just make your way as Eric softly plays Amazing Grace. This is an important ritual, and we have all the time that we need for it. I'll invite my colleague Marian Weisel to come back here near me because she's offering the prayer. And we'll just take a moment and make sure that everyone in the room is connected one to the other and connected to Mark. Come on forward, put a hand forward on a shoulder in front of you. And know that the line is long, but you are connected one to the other, to this man who is newly ordained. Let us press into him our good intentions, our warm feelings, our best hopes, and courage for the journey. I will invite Marian to pray when she is ready.
Join with me in prayer for Mark and his ministry. Spirit of life, grant Mark wisdom to shape his life. Ministry is absorbing work and is best balanced with attention to his own health and happiness. Nourish him in the life of the Spirit. May prayer be in his heart and on his lips. Give him joy in his own walk of faith. Without grace, no promise is sure. God of grace, pour out your Spirit on Mark, that he may be faithful to his calling, that he may express compassion for the poor and the friendless, the sick, the grieving, and the troubled. Grant him the courage to communicate your presence among those who are powerless, to do the holy work of bringing healing and peace. Spirit of life, be with us, Mark's colleagues and support. May we serve together so that the people might be sustained. Let Mark know that he is not alone practicing ministry out in the community. We are with him, as are the people of the UU Fellowship of Door County. May each of us here today discern the gifts we have each been given, calling them forth from one another, and together using these gifts for the good of all. Spirit of life and of love, sustain Mark in his ministry. May the energy that flows among us be a liberating, healing, and empowering energy within you always, Mark. And may it continue to bless the many whom you touch. May it be so.
As gently as we made our way forward, let us make our way back to our seats.
Thank you.
Shorty.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Well.
Well.
Long time. We go back, gosh, I don't know, maybe 25 years now. Probably about a quarter of a century.
Oh, goodness.
That's a quarter of a century. I'm Reverend Michelle Walsh, and I ran an urban youth ministry in Roxbury, with the UU Urban Ministry, that Mark was the mentor for two of our young people at the time. And I'm very grateful that you've granted me this opportunity to give the charge to the minister, though I think I'll be a little arrogant and add in the hand of fellowship.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little charge to the congregation.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. All right, so I know that you know Mark very well, but I also want to share with you some of the words that I said for the recommendation to the ministerial fellowship, committee for Mark. As a congregant here, he was heavily involved in supporting the UU Urban Ministries youth programs, and in part of that was the development of the computer lab, also working with others here in Concord for the youth programs, and the teen program, the Funderburg Youth Program, for many years. And then he became involved as a volunteer with our Urban Youth Ministry program on the weekend, at that time called Stand High, Stand United. And he mentored these two young men from their elementary school years through their teenage years and beyond, as best as you can stay in touch with them. And that's really remarkable in and of itself, to be able to hold that relationship together over so many years. He also was involved with what was called the United Souls program for men in transition. So that was the beginning in so many ways of working with prison ministry. And through the gamut of these experiences, you became intimately familiar with the struggles of a white suburban male of some privilege seeking to build authentic relationships across the divides of race, culture, and class. And again, that's no small thing. In my observation, he built a very successful skill set from that area, which he can continue to speak from his heart in many different locations. He was a reliable listening and active presence in the community, and he learned how to differentiate between cultivating dependence versus empowerment during those years, and then also knowing when his white privilege was needed to do advocacy on behalf of people. I remember in particular when one young man was struggling in school, and Mark went to many, many school meetings with the family and advocating for his particular learning needs. And that was really remarkable to see him so dedicated in those settings that are very complex. I also have a memory of a kayaking trip and a Rough Rapids water trip that there was a little bit of a tiny accident, but it worked out well, right? A little overturning.
You always take a spill now and then.
Yeah, but he really helped the young man through that thing. It was a very empowering experience overall, even though I had a little anxiety in the aftermath. He learned a lot about the mental and emotional struggles of families during that time under the added weight of institutional oppression. And he witnessed the growth and the resiliency of these families. So, having said all that, I charge you to always hold these lessons that you learned over these years with great tenderness and humility. Righteous anger is a part of the social justice motivation, but deeper than righteous anger, which all too easily becomes a thing of ego. Hold first and foremost the compassion that is at its foundation. When we live and work among those who are disempowered by larger systems, hold the capacity for strength and resilience foremost in your mind. That even in the direst of circumstances, the human capacity and soul is a powerful thing. And hold also that our work as clergy is to be in partnership with that strength and resilience. We are not there to lift people up. We are there to partner with what already exists, and we are there to learn very deeply from what already exists. We are not the tradition of all saints. We are the tradition of all souls, of the prophethood and priesthood and pastorhood of all believers. We seek mutually to release the gifts of each soul, of every soul, for the challenging work that's needed in our times today. And that is the work both of righteous prophetic anger, but also pastoral compassion and healing, inclusive of compassion and healing for oneself. That's really important for you to remember in particular. You do not need to prove yourself anymore. You never did to begin with, actually. I don't think so. Okay? Remember that you are a vessel, a powerful and important one, yet still you are only one vessel. Take time to rest and renew above all else, and find your companion vessels in your journey as a Unitarian Universalist community minister and clergy. For sometimes it is lonely and isolating as a journey and ministry. And here I ask your representatives from your congregation to remember that it is easy to make a saint out of community ministers and to forget that we are vessels and we are fragile and we are human and we need support too. And so on this day, I am proud to be a companion vessel in your journey and to welcome you as my colleague, Reverend Mark Richards, with also the Hand of Fellowship.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
And I see we're going to sing a delightful little song called This Little Light of Mine, which was a favorite in our youth ministry too.
We know this.
Follow along. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine all around the world. All around the world. I'm gonna let it shine. All around the world. I'm gonna let it shine. All around the world. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Right here in this room. Right here in this room. I'm gonna let it shine right here in this room. I'm gonna let it shine right here in this room. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, yeah. We're gonna let it shine, yeah. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it
Wow. What a long, strange trip this has been. Oh. You know, in this service sort of mirrors that whole trip. We came in with a march, something, whatever it was. Dum, 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 huh? Bum, ba, dum, ba, da, dum, bum. And now we're going out with a dance. La, da, la, da, da. Ya, la, la, da, da. So, and it all began right here in this room. I had called Margaret Stewart and said, "Do you have a choir?" She said, "We have an excellent choir." And she did not exaggerate. She did not, however, tell me about this gem of a bell choir. How about giving some love to these folks, huh? Thank you so much. You brought magic here today, and I thank you. And so, I came that Sunday, and Gary Smith preached, and the choir sang, and on my way out, Jan Lipscomb met me at the door, and she wrote me out a name tag and took me downstairs to coffee hour and introduced me to some folks, and I felt like I had found a place to belong. And I got involved in the men's group, and I got involved in coming of age, and I got involved in the urban ministry, and where all those things overlapped, I heard my call to ministry. And when you learned of that, you gave me your support, you gave me your wisdom, you gave me your love. More than once, you gave me your forgiveness. And for that, I will always be grateful. But now it's time to shine our little lights back out into the world. And so please join me in the benediction printed on the back of your order of service. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings. Now please be seated for the postlude.